All right, hey guys, welcome back. It's Anchor Pete here again, and I'm back with Chris and with Danny, and we are here for episode 2 of the Lasser Cast. And last week we covered Absentia by Mike Flanagan. Well, today we're going to be covering Oculus. Guys, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Very good.
So far, so good. I was hoping that people would start following us on Twitter because then they could get some gems like what we had last night, right? Where Chris was posting his werewolf thoughts, and there was some gold in there, like when you were saying that American Werewolf in London is the Raiders of the Lost Ark of werewolf movies.
I didn't want there to be a mix-up. I love werewolves. I love werewolf films. The American Werewolf in London, I don't think that's a hot take either. It's damn near perfect. American Werewolf in London. And again, I don't dislike The Howling, but it's a film for years that I've tried to tell myself, like, you love this. You gotta love this. How do you not love this? And I'm like, shit, I don't love this. I want to. There's so many things I love about it.
Yeah.
But it's just, God, it's a little snoozy, man. It's tough.
If today wasn't Oculus Day in my living room, Charlotte actually asked me to watch American Werewolf in London this morning, and I told her tomorrow. So that's actually on the docket for tomorrow, is introducing my 9-year-old to American Werewolf in London.
Nice, man.
Well, a naked American man who steals balloons.
What else does a 9-year-old need?
Yeah.
That's going to get you demonetized. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like, we've all kind of been doing marathons of Oculus recently, and Danny and Chris have actually watched the Oculus short too that was made before the feature film was made. And so I think, Danny, how many hours today have you spent watching Oculus?
The short is 32 minutes. I watched it twice, once with the commentary. The film is, I think, an hour and 40 minutes or an hour and 45 minutes. I watched that twice, once with commentary, plus about 10 to 15 minutes of other Blu-ray extra stuff. So a lot.
Yeah.
We'll go with a lot.
I could do the easy part. I'll just talk about the background real quick, and then maybe one of you guys could jump in and summarize it for us. Okay. So it premiered in 2013 in the Toronto Film Festival, and then it premiered in the United States in 2014. And the movie cost $5 million to make, and it ended up making, by October of 2014, $44 million. So it was a success for Mike Flanagan. Karen Gillan, she is the sister. She's one of 2 siblings that are the main characters of this movie. Her brother Tim is played by a guy named Brenton Thwaites. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And Brenton Thwaites, it's kind of funny because he's Tim in this movie, but what I recognized him from, he's actually Dick Grayson in the Titans TV show.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and there is a Tim Robin, there's Tim Drake, and it was just kind of throwing me off,
Yeah. I think I probably made once when Titans started. I'm like, I probably made the Tim connection, because how could you not?
Right.
Especially if you're a Batman fan and a horror fan or a fan of Oculus.
Right. and so, like, I thought he was really great in this, and I kind of liked him more in this than I liked him in Titans. So
I believe he's I think he's from the UK as well, because
Australia, I think.
Oh, Australia? Okay. Because I know I didn't find out, but I know Flanagan mentions in the commentary how happy he was that him and Karen Gillan both nailed their American accents, especially during heightened emotional moments, because that's usually when people tend to slip out of them.
Right.
And they're both him. I mean, her I knew because of Doctor Who, and because she's so popular now. But him, I had no idea. Like, they both kind of sound like they're from nowhere, because that's what happens when you put it on an American accent. But they both really stick the landing throughout the whole film.
Another thing Flanagan says about Brenton Thwaites that, so last week, just by random chance, I rewatched Psycho 2 and 3.
Okay.
Totally at random. And Flanagan says that one of the appeals of Brenton Thwaites' performance was he reminded him, especially facially, of Anthony Perkins, especially in the first Psycho when he obviously is much younger. But the kind of the emotion that he gives off just in the ability of like making a facial expression and selling the moment.
Yeah.
And once Flanagan said that, as I was rewatching it with the commentary, I was like, oh, okay, I can see Anthony Perkins doing this. So
yeah, I can actually see that too. Yeah. I think there's more of a resemblance there than Vince Vaughn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So since so you guys want to jump in and do the summary of the plot?
So basically, 21-year-old Tim gets out of a psychiatric facility. He's been there for 10 years. He was put there after the quote-unquote murder of his father. And he meets his sister in the parking lot. And they really get right down to business, or at least she does, and basically saying, listen, you did not do this. This mirror that was in the house, it's supernatural. This is what did this to our family. I have this mirror in my possession now, and we are going to go destroy it. And from there on, it becomes a battle of logic and the supernatural. Really, Tim is Scully, and she's Mulder. Kelly is Mulder. That's really their dynamic. It's this push and pull from supernatural into logic.
That was a fantastic recap, man. And
I was just gonna say,
stop myself
evil mirror.
Yeah, and I really like that comparison with Mulder and Scully too. I think that's really appropriate. How do you compare this movie to the one that we just reviewed, Absentia? Do you feel like there's similarities? Do you feel like there are things that Flanagan learned in Absentia that he put into play in this movie?
I mean, you could tell similarities in all of Flanagan's work, just because of you're not watching traditional horror. You're watching movies about characters. You're watching movies about families, and obviously Absentia and Oculus are incredibly similar in that the two main characters are siblings,
right,
who are dealing with tragedy. In Absentia, it's the disappearance and the presumed death of, I believe it was Callie's husband or Trisha's husband. Trisha's husband, yeah. And in this movie, of course, it's the death of the horrifying death of both of their parents.
Yeah.
And it's just, Flanagan could make a very simplistic horror movie of that, but instead gives you time to marinate with these characters and deal with the family aspect of things and the emotional weight of the situation before he gets into, this is an evil supernatural mirror that is eating dogs and killing plants and all of those things.
Right.
And you're gonna, and I mean, this really, as we go through his films, eventually get through all of them, you're going to see a major difference with films like Absentia and Oculus. From this point going forward, you're going to see a difference. He had more of a nihilistic point of view when he made these two films. So when you start Oculus, the opening of this film, Tim's vision, you're off to the races. You get a little bit of everything. You get, within the first 2 minutes, you get a ghost, you get a gun, we hit the ground and we are just moving. And then the movie kind of slows down and we gradually start going again. But really, it's going to be interesting as we move through these films over time to see how he's changed as a director and really gotten better and just his worldview overall.
Yeah, and then Danny, I know that you are really into WWE. I don't know if you are, Chris, but
I was going to bring that up because
they produced this movie, right?
So I found out about this movie from watching Monday Night Raw, probably because it was a WWE Studios movie. They advertised the hell out of it. And every commercial break back in 2013 for Monday Night Raw and for SmackDown was an Oculus commercial. And I thought, being that, first of all, WWE Studios' reputation at that point and now is shit. We're talking like the Marine with John Cena.
Right.
So, like,
what about See No Evil?
Yeah, they did do See No Evil, though.
Yeah.
Any movie that's come out in the last 20 years with a wrestler in it is.
Right.
But I remember seeing the commercials for this movie and thinking, oh, WWE Studios evil mirror movie. That's going to be good. And and I remember trying to watch this movie a couple times, and maybe I wasn't ready for it, or I wasn't ready to give the commitment to it. It was one of those movies that I couldn't get into.
Yeah.
But couldn't get into because after 5 minutes I would turn it off.
Yeah.
And then it was only after Chris had recommended Absentia that I went back and I started looking up who Mike Flanagan was, and I went, oh shit, he did Oculus. Maybe I will give that movie a shot.
Yeah.
And I went back and watched this for the first time. But yeah, it's also hilarious that the mirror at the very beginning, when they're unveiling it at the auction, is from the Levesque Estates. And that name means nothing to anybody unless you are a nerdy ass wrestling fan like me, because you've heard of Triple H, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Triple H's real name is Paul Levesque.
Oh, okay.
And that actually is in the trivia on IMDb, even though it was a complete accident. Like, that has nothing to do, like Triple H did not ask for that, and that was just completely accidental. But like a wrestling nerd like me heard that and was like, ooh, WWE Studios.
Since we're talking about little Easter eggs and nuggets like that, maybe we should talk about the fact that some Absentia people pop up in this movie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I had to go to IMDb and check it out, but I was super excited to see Detective Mallory. Dave Levine
is one of the dead bodies, or he's one of the people in Karen Gillan's montage of photos.
He's the ghost who loses all the weight.
Yes.
And then Flanagan's younger brother is when she shows a picture of a guy laying on a slab. That's Flanagan's younger brother, who was the guy who kept showing up to the tunnel in Absentia. And of course, Courtney Bell, Trisha, was the auctioneer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then was also Detective Lonergan. It said that he was in the movie.
He's in a cut. So from watching the deleted scenes, Katie Parker is in a deleted scene. She sells Tim his new cell phone. Flanagan said he cut that just because it kind of stopped the momentum of the movie, even though he kind of liked the scene.
Yeah.
And Detective Lonergan is like the coda at the end, the original ending scene, which brought back Scott Graham, who was the only actor in the short.
Oh.
He plays Tim in the short. And the movie ends with the laser glass being brought back to the auction site, and Scott Graham is there, and Detective Lonergan from Absentia kind of pops his head in, and that was supposed to be his cameo in the movie, but that got cut, and they went with the ending that's in the movie now.
Scott Graham does have a speaking role in the film, though. The scene is basically the mirror is now sold. They sold it via Skype at the auction. They're getting it prepped to be moved.
Yeah.
And Kaylee's dealing with the auction mover, who is Scott Graham from the Oculus short.
I see. You know, it's funny. You guys are talking about like the making of the film and WWE, financing it. I know that when Flanagan was trying to, shop around to get people to make the movie, they wanted to make it into like a found footage film, and he just was not into that. And so eventually,
every place he went to was like, I see this as a found footage film, and he's like, I don't. I'll see you later.
Right.
And,
Which is just funny because there are aspects of this that would play into a found footage film, but oh man, it would have been so lame. You know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you guys have seen the short, and I have not. So do you guys want to just kind of you give spoilers for the short? It's fine. It's on YouTube, and just kind of tell us how it connects to this movie.
It's basically Tim alone in a room for 32 minutes, and it's basically the character of Tim Russell doing the experiment with the plants and the dog, and he filmed it in the back of a coffee shop in 4 days for, I believe, $1,500, and it basically came around. It's actually called Oculus Chapter 3, The Man with the Plan. And I love in the commentary, he brings up how him and his partner at the time, where they were so convinced that they were going to be able to do all 9 of their short films that they pulled a George Lucas and gave them chapter number. And it opens basically it opens with in the feature. The scene that Karen Gillan has, the epic 13-minute, laundry list of all of the incidents that have happened with the laser glass. It opens with that. Mm-hmm. Only it's being read by Scott Graham, who's playing Tim. And it's basically just 32 minutes of him with the alarms, with the phone calls, descending into madness. And it's great. It really worked. It's one of the best short films that I've ever seen. And one of the things that I noticed, and again, I'm going to give Chris credit for this because he turned me on to the Kingcast, the podcast series. I listened to Mike Flanagan on there, and he talked about 1408 and how he wanted to make 1408, and when he couldn't, because the rights were with another director, he basically made 1408 as a killer mirror instead of a killer hotel room. And I actually rewatched 1408 also as part of my homework. And the scene in the hotel where Sam Jackson is going through the laundry list of deaths that have occurred in 1408 is almost a mirror of what Flanagan does in the short, and then in the feature with this person died in 1754, and then 1750. It's just it follows the 1408 framework very closely, and you can tell the influence that he had to Stephen King and to that story, which makes it perfect where his career ended up going.
That's really what makes that short so successful, because you have the short, and then, you watch something like 1408, you watch the Oculus feature, and you say to yourself, these movies are great, but I could shut them off after these scenes and be happy. Because they're so well acted, and just played out. And there's so much that Flanagan takes from the short, so much that carries over to the feature. Him being named Tim, the fact that, the fact that the mirror hung in his father's office, a dog named Mason, and it really is very effective. And another interesting thing, as Flanagan was working out the feature, a very early on idea was that this wouldn't even take place in the house. It would actually take place in the basement of the auction house. And it would be Kaylee and Tim facing off against the mirror in the basement of the auction house.
The short is in a blindingly white room.
Yeah.
And he's like, all horror movies are in the dark. Let's do a horror movie, not just in the light, but in a pure white space where everything is visible, and see if we can still get scares that way. They do this in both the short and in the feature. Is they start the history lesson about the laser glass in, I believe it's 1754.
Okay.
And he's very clear to say, we don't know who created it. We don't know if it was made by Satan. You know, it just exists.
Yeah.
And the first time we hear about it is 1754. And I actually wrote down, he said that origin stories make us feel comfortable as audience members because, I feel more comfortable because I know where this killer came from. I know, because maybe if I know where they came from, I can stop them, or I can stop the evil. And he followed that by saying it's way scarier to not explain something.
Yeah.
And I wrote down Halloween versus Halloween 2, because one of the things for me that makes Halloween such an amazing horror film, as you can see from the blanket on my couch, you don't know anything about, like, the way Loomis describes Michael in Halloween. You don't know what he is. You don't know why he's stalking the girls that he's stalking. You don't know why he's going after Laurie. And Loomis talks about him like he's this ultimate pure evil. And it's terrifying. And then in Halloween 2, it's his sister. And he's going after his sister.
Right.
And it's so cut and dry. And Halloween 2 is great, but it's not Halloween.
Right.
And Flanagan brought up Nightmare on Elm Street and how we know who Freddy Krueger was. He was a child murderer. We know that the parents in the town killed him, but we have no idea how he became a dream demon.
Right.
And we don't care because Freddy is so freaking scary.
Right.
And that's part of the appeal. And I just love that aspect to it.
On Wikipedia, it said that Lovecraft was an influence for this mirror, too. And there you go. I thought we could do a little shout out to your shirt over there, your Lovecraft beer shirt.
Well, yeah. He brings up Lovecraft because Lovecraft is all about, his like most famous quote is, the greatest fear is the fear of the unknown.
Right.
And that ties into, the fact that Flanagan doesn't explain where the Lasser glass comes from. He doesn't explain what the evil is inside of it. It's just evil.
Yeah.
And, he makes a point in one of the commentaries or in one of the behind the scenes features is that he didn't want to make a movie where like a bunch of kids just go up against an evil force and catch evil on a bad day.
Yes.
And I love that line because that's like every horror movie you watch is like this unstoppable killer. And then, a random girl and her boyfriend hit him in the right spot like it's a video game.
Yeah. They hit Wolfman in the nards, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that this is actually a good way to like segue into spoilers. Going along with what you were saying about the mirror and its mystery, there was one part that they were talking about in one of the behind the scenes featurettes where they were thinking, should they do flashback sequences for her big exposition dump, or should they just do it straight? And as you've said, Karen Gillan just delivers all the lines just straight. She's just pulling up pictures in front of the camera. So basically, for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, two things. If you don't want any spoilers, just stop listening now and look in the description for when we stop talking about spoilers. But if you want to just keep listening, we're going to tell you all the scenes. Kaylee goes to show her brother all the research that she's done on the Lasser glass. And it's just a series of different photos of people that have owned the Lasser glass at different points and all their horrific deaths.
Another flashback to Absentia where Callie pulled up the computer and tried to convince Trisha that, the tunnel is evil because look at all of this evidence that I have.
Yeah.
It's another that I just thought of.
There is a whole explanation of Kaylee's plan. Oh, I'm not going to fall under the influence of the mirror, and here are all my fail-safes. Now, did you guys think those fail-safes were effective? Did you think that they were clever? What would you guys think of the fail-safes themselves?
I think it's that the cleverness of that scene is just, it's all over that tiny room. It's incredible. First of all, how they even shot that scene with the giant mirror on the wall, and it's, I mean, so many limited points of being able to even shoot that scene. That alone, the behind the scenes stuff, is incredible. But what Karen Gillan does with a 13-page monologue at so early in her career is terrific. And I made the Mulder and Scully comparison before. They were talking about that in the commentary. I believe Mike's producer, Trevor Morgan, brought up the Mulder and Scully comparison, which is great. But I realized watching this, I feel like there are times where I get like a Poltergeist vibe, not so much in what I'm seeing, but there's, you know, that scene in Poltergeist where Diane goes in, she's tied to the rope. And I feel like Tim is holding the rope, trying to keep Kaylee. Kaylee just is reaching for the light. She's going, like, she just wants to know so bad. And he's like, no, we're just trying to pull her back in a little bit. I mean, that's just where my brain went for some reason. I could be way off base. But this back and forth for however long that scene goes, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It really is, the two of them act the shit out of that scene.
Yeah.
And I love that Flanagan, again, just like in Absentia, he wants you, because that's really his mindset, and is still his mindset. He's a grounded, real-world guy, but there's always that chance. And for 10, 15 minutes, you have 2 feet planted firmly in logic and 2 feet just way out into the supernatural. And they both have incredibly valid points. And you're sitting there and you're going, every time I watch it, which was a lot in the last 2 days, just like Danny, I'm sitting there going, I'm like, God damn it, this is so smart.
Yeah.
And it's nonstop. It just moves. This whole movie just moves.
That's also due to Flanagan being not just an amazing writer-director, but an editor also. He says in the commentary that to make that scene flow better, he cut almost every sentence that she says, he does a camera cut, either to one of the photos or just to her on one of the computer monitors or on one of the cameras, or just a side angle of her. It's continuous editing that, again, tricks us into thinking maybe the scene is moving faster than it actually is. Because otherwise, it is basically, you know, for me, it was like a history lesson. I was like, you know, taking the notes, like, okay, 1758, who died? Wait, how they died? Like, but in the movie, it's probably one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a great scene, and it's not.
Well, they have their claws in you the minute you hear 45 deaths over the course of 4 centuries. You're like, I'm sorry, what? Like, you're just like, what, you know? And again, boom, we're off. Let's go. Give it. I want to know all of it. Tell me all of it. That's why I almost wish, I love Oculus the way it is. I love the feature the way it is. But damn, give me that 90-minute movie in the basement of that auction house with just the two of them in the mirror. I want to see that movie.
From what I read, they were saying that he felt like there wasn't enough story with just the two of them in that sequence, right? And so they intertwined it with the story of them as children. And so to me, the scenes I actually enjoyed the most were when they were children in 2002, because I just think that, like, Katee Sackoff, who I loved her as Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica, right? I thought she was fantastic in this. I think she maybe was the best actress or actor in the film.
I don't think she gets enough credit for how versatile she is.
Yeah.
She is. There's a moment in this where you setting up the scene, you know, she believes that her husband Alan is cheating on her. And there is a grounded psychotic break moment for her that is bookended by these supernatural moments. And again, this is all, I mean, this is the acting, of course, but this is Flanagan's direction. And you know he's telling these people, listen, as an individual, you keep 1 foot in the real world and you keep 1 foot in the supernatural. And man, Sackoff just acts the shit out of every moment she's on screen. I love her as a mother, I love just these little, you know, there's a moment where the kids are running around the house, they're playing laser tag, and she's like, guys, just, you know, either go outside or the alternative is moving boxes. And I'm like, what just a subtle, fun mom moment, you know?
Yeah, because like the whole motherhood thing, I feel like plays a big part in her arc, right? And since we're in spoilers, I could say that basically she starts to lose her sanity more and more. And with the mirror itself, in the behind the scenes, they were talking about how the mirror finds a way to get inside of you. And so for her, her way is actually quite literal because she's looking at her cesarean scar. And she becomes kind of self-conscious about it when she's looking at it in the mirror. And then eventually at some point, she feels like it's opening up. And that's when she really starts to go overboard. I think that there was something about her own personal evil, her personal demons that were connected to her being a mother, because she eventually goes after her children, which leads to her demise. And when she's going through that process, there's this great physical acting on her part. And on the behind the scenes featurette, Mike Flanagan was talking about how she would have black and blues all over her body because she was throwing herself around the set.
He said that he saw her in the elevator one morning and he asked if she had already been in makeup, and it was bruising around her neck from when she's collared towards the end. And she threw herself into the role so much that she was like physically bruised from it.
Father, because we also see the father's descent into madness too. It's not as clear as like what the mirror is using to get inside of him, but I know that it starts off with a pretty disturbing scene where the dad is like taking off his own fingernail. Another person comes to the house and talks to the dad when the kids are trying to get help from the outside. And it's this great sequence where the dad is talking to the neighbor and telling, oh, you don't have to worry about it. My kid's just overreacting. And it just cuts to his fingernails all being removed and just bloody on the door frame.
Hashtag Flanagan hates hands.
Oh, okay, okay.
And he said in the commentary that he can't even watch that scene because he's so grossed out by those things. And I'm like, I'm calling bullshit on that, sir, because you put a scene like that in every goddamn movie. Between Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep, like that guy loves doing damage to hands.
To me, as like a parent, right, I felt like a big part of this movie was not having patience for your kids or like having resentment towards your children. And with Katee Sackoff, it's with the cesarean scar. With the dad, it's like kind of like work and not wanting to take the responsibilities of being a father.
Absolutely. I was thinking about another thought that I didn't want to lose, though, about what he kind of brought into this project with him, his view on mirrors. He grew up in a house where, you know, mirrors, you know, when after someone passed, like, you know, you would cover a mirror so they, you know, spirits would not come back through the mirror. And that the mirror lies, any mirror, every mirror, any reflection, it's always, it's not perfect. It's not how the world sees you. It's not how your loved ones see you. It's not how you're meant to see yourself. Any reflection, any mirror is a lie, is a warped version of yourself that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. So you kind of take those ideas and you throw them in there, and you know, Katee Sackoff's Marie, just looking in the mirror, and you know, and then she's just like, you know, she's so self-conscious about it, and then they cut to that scene in the bedroom, and he's, you know, like a loving husband says, like, what scar? Like we would all say, you know, like you're focusing on something, you know, your children. I think at that time, Tim, who's the youngest, was 11. Yeah. So like you're this is something, you know, like this poor woman is like sees this in the mirror for over a decade now, you know, and it's just this warped version of herself that she sees.
We should talk about the actual night of what happens with the parents, right? Because what people that might not have seen the movie don't know is that the dad captures the mom basically after she attacks the children. And he locks her up in their bedroom and collars her to the wall. And it's this horrible scene where like she's just this feral creature in the bedroom. And there's kind of parallels throughout the movie too. There's two sequences that really upset me. You know, because we talked about the fingernails. Another thing that really upset me was Katee Sackoff chewing on the ceramic plate. And of course,
the light bulb.
The light bulb, right? Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, which one disturbed you guys more?
The light bulb.
It's the light bulb, because it's disturbing, and as a horror fan, you recognize this. You look at it and you're like, here it comes. Like, it's like you live for those moments.
I just love
that was a big trailer moment too.
Yeah. That up close shot of her, and you see her eyes, and just like the bulb, and you don't see the glass at all. Oh, fuck.
Which is okay. So, Kaylee has a fiance. I don't know if we've mentioned it before, but Kaylee has a fiance, and he works in the auction house. And he's been given the prompt to call her every hour to make sure that she's safe, as one of the safeguards to make sure the mirror doesn't take over. So at one point, she is under the influence of the mirror, and she thinks she sees her mother, and she takes a piece of ceramic and stabs it into the ghostly mother's neck. And she realizes it's her fiance. Now, do you think that he was there and she killed him, or is it just that was just in her mind?
I do think that she killed him. I think that they really stay on that scene for a while to emphasize to you that this actually happened. But just a fun little side note really quick. I'm watching this last night. I'm taking notes, and I get to see him, and for some reason I just write down dry toast. Because I'm like, this guy is just dry toast. And as a character, he's got to look at Kaylee and think, I'm going to wind up dead at some point. This something. She's printing out corpsey photos. I'm very straight-laced, mild-mannered. She's got a wild streak. Something's going on. This could potentially be my undoing.
Yes.
And then I had a little birdcage joke for myself later on when she stabbed him. And I said, pierce the toast. The toast got pierced. but I'm sure he seems like he's a fine actor. I'm sure he's a very nice person. But I know his name is Michael, but I didn't know at the time, and I just kept referring to him as dry toast whenever I would.
I actually referred to him as One Tree Hill because I watched a season of that with my wife, and I was like, this guy looks really familiar, and then I looked him up, and I'm like, oh, it's basketball guy from One Tree Hill. All right.
Oh, shit.
I mean, we're in spoiler territory.
Right.
Flanagan does say in the commentary that he's there and he does get killed.
Oh, okay.
But that is the one part of the movie that I don't like.
Uh-huh.
I think because that, and again, this goes back to a previous conversation, I think that scene feels kind of like a cheap horror movie moment.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we need to up the body count in this movie. Why would he have shown up there? Unless, yes, the mirror could be making them make phone calls that they don't remember making. But it just seems so out of place that he would just randomly show up and be right behind her. That's like the one, if I'm going to complain about the movie that I really enjoy, it's that one scene.
This dude ain't just showing up. He's not doing a single thing unless she asks him to do it.
Right.
There's no way. That's just this guy. You know?
In one of the deleted scenes, that Flanagan was talking about how he cut the scene because Karen Gillan has a line where she jokes to Tim about how she slept her way to the middle to try to get to the glass. Because, how does she's supposed to be, I think, 23 in the movie. How does she at 23 have the connections to a gallery that would have an auction? And there was this discussion amongst Flanagan and the producers on, does she actually love this guy, or is she just using him to get to the mirror? I do like that they do keep it as they are a good couple. But that said, he's totally creeped out by her having those murder photos, and he's not showed up to the house.
Well, I think at this point we should talk about what ends up happening to the parents, right? And so basically the dad lets the mom out, right? And she goes after the kids, and the kids try to escape, but the dad set him right by the door with a gun. And the kids try to defend themselves. The daughter, Kaylee, gets out at one point, but then goes back into the house to save her brother. And it leads to the dad shooting the mom. And then after that, the dad confronts the son and the daughter. He has the gun right to the son's head. And he says this great line, too. I've met my demons. I have many. I have seen the devil. He is me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, in the short, that's Scott Graham. I keep calling him Scott Graham. That's his name. But the Tim, who's in the room, gets a phone call from like his dead father. And that's what his dead father says to him on the phone. And I think Mike Flanagan said that's his voice just stretched out with like audio.
Oh, okay.
That is again, not to plug my shirt, but I've read a lot of H.P. Lovecraft, and that is the most Lovecraftian line of dialogue that you can get.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
And that is something that you would see in any Lovecraft story.
Yeah.
Like, I've met my demons. They are many. It's just very. It evokes such a Lovecraftian tone.
Yes.
Which is great.
Yeah, and it's very tragic because the father just seems completely consumed at that point. But then for a moment, he like lets it slip, and he actually tells his son and daughter to run, and then gives his son the gun to kill him, and to kill himself, basically. And the son, Tim, kills his dad, and he ultimately takes the fall for the murder of both of his parents.
And Chris mentioned earlier how like this movie starts and you're just in it from the beginning, ghost, gun, and this movie almost, again, just like Absentia, which we brought up last time, this movie comes full circle so well because one of the first things you see at the beginning in the auction or right after the auction scene, Courtney Bell as the auctioneer says, it's in perfect condition except for this crack in the lower third. And then when Karen Gillan is standing in front of it, she's like, I hope this hurt you.
Yes.
And she's like touching the crack. So like, you know that she knows where that crack came from.
Right.
And then we find out at this, in the flashback, that when the dad, Alan, basically helps his son pull the trigger and shoot him, his body flies back into the mirror and causes the crack.
Yes.
And it's this like perfect full circle moment.
Yes.
Also a preview of things to come. His moment, Alan and Tim's moment in front of the mirror when he looks at Tim and says, "Run." That I say a preview for things to come because that was Flanagan's homage to the end of the Shining novel.
Oh, okay.
Where Jack is the Shining novel ends very differently, where he basically has Danny. You know, Alan has Tim in that moment. Jack Torrance has Danny in that moment, and Jack basically tells him to run and sacrifices himself. Like does in a way like differently in this, doing it, pulling the trigger for him. Mm-hmm. Whereas metaphorically does that in The Shining, but and however many years later we get Dr. Sleep.
Right.
And just as another little Shining addendum, Rory Cochrane, according to the commentary, he opted to act in this movie as the anti-Jack Torrance.
Huh.
Where he said, I'm going to play it straight the whole movie. I'm not like, one of the big complaints, if it's a complaint about The Shining, is that Jack is crazy the whole movie. Like he starts the movie and he's pretty nuts already.
Did you ever hear the story about Rory Cochrane? Rory Cochrane basically threw Mike Flanagan under the bus at a Q&A at TIFF or some other festival. He's like, he tells everyone, he's like, Mike thinks that Steven Weber's Jack Torrance from the miniseries is better than Nicholson's Jack Torrance. And apparently everyone was like, whoa. And he's like, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. And he's basically saying, he's like, Steven Weber's King's version of Jack Torrance is better than Nicholson's version, because Nicholson's is like a complete 180.
Like Rory Cochrane had the option, obviously being possessed by the mirror, to go crazy in this role, and he opted to just play it kind of quiet, reserved, like, and it works. It works so well, and especially if you grew up knowing him from Empire Records and Dazed and Confused.
Yes.
This is not the Rory Cochrane that I was expecting the first time I saw it.
Yes.
And he blew me away in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you see, it's funny because we keep talking about The Shining and we keep talking about Stephen King and then also Flanagan's movies themselves. There is this one thing that he talked about, which is the idea of parents doing violence to their children. And that's, of course, in The Shining. And it's something that we have a hard time wrapping our minds around, right? And this whole end sequence with the parents is just so hard to watch because the kids, like you said before, the kids are excellent actors. And you can tell that they are simultaneously scared of their parents, but then also sad to see their parents get hurt, right? And it's just this really horrible scene to watch, and it's so well done. It weaves in and out with the scenes that are taking place in the present. So Kaylee, as a child, will run into a room and then become Kaylee as an adult. And Tim, as a child, will become Tim as an adult. And
sometimes they're in the same space at the same time.
Yes.
There's this funny moment in the commentary where they would call Brenton Thwaites over, and they'd say, we need you to just stand here so that I could take this camera shot over your hairline so that your hair is in the scene. And then they would have the younger Tim, played by Garret Ryan Ewald, which I'm reading off my sheet. They would have him run into the room to do the scene with Brenton Thwaites, like just this much in the picture.
Wow.
And it's done seamlessly. And again, it just evokes that I'm going to have to do a Haunting of Hill House rewatch.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Because Haunting of Hill House, The Shining, this movie, it's all about violence that the parents are doing to each other or violence between the parents and the children. And there's multiple times in this movie where the parents are strangling their children. And as a parent, it really freaks you out because it's like you can't even imagine yourself being at that point. And I think that Flanagan just puts it right in your face. And it's like, this is so disturbing.
Your kids are younger than mine, Pete.
Yeah. Maybe I might have thought about strangling them once or twice too,
But you notice that's the moment. That's the moment that finally gets Katee Sackoff's character Marie to snap out of it as best she can.
Yeah,
is when she actually has her hands around her daughter's throat.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if there's ever going to be a moment, it's going to be that moment.
Right.
And it's also very interesting what's going on at that time. Like you guys brought it before, the timeline is so blended together at this point that these characters are acknowledging each other in the same frames.
Yes.
And you sit there as a viewer and you're like, what, like, is the mirror not just, is the mirror somehow screwing with space and time?
Yeah.
Like you're like, is this stylistic? Then you gotta, if there was anyone but Flanagan, I would say this is just a stylistic choice, but you're like, man, I think the mirror is actually just screwing with space and time now.
But just to piggyback on that, I was going to say, you get the feeling that if any other director did this movie, it would be 35 minutes of the kids acting, and then there would be a black screen, and it would say 11 years later, and then we would have adult actors, and the movie would be fine. It would be good. It would be a good little horror movie. But it wouldn't have the impact that this movie has.
Yes. Well, speaking of impact, the movie itself has a pretty dark ending. And you guys were saying that at this point, Flanagan was very nihilistic. And I feel like if you look at the ending of Absentia and you look at the ending of this, to me, it's both evil wins, right?
Oh, 100%.
Supernatural wins.
Well, you said, speaking of impact, and I thought you were going to make the pun, like, speaking of impact, let's talk about Karen Gillan's head. That's my sense of humor. But yeah, so, and it goes back to that line that he had said where, to him, the convention is, oh, well, good wins, and, the final girl or whoever defeats the bad guy. And he didn't want to make a movie where, evil just got beat by a few kids who got lucky. And so her big final end-all be-all plan, if all else goes wrong, she has a kill switch. If all of her other tricks with the recordings and the cameras don't work, she has a kill switch. Every 30 minutes, she has an anchor, Pete.
Make sure to like and subscribe.
Yes. She has an anchor that is weighed down from the ceiling that swings down and will hit and break the mirror. And she demonstrates this earlier in the movie. There's actually a hole in the wall, so you know that she's been trying this. She's been, like, making sure it works. And again, we're seeing Tim's remembering his childhood. He's just relived killing his father with his father's help, and he sees in the mirror he just looks and he sees the mirror there, and he says, "We're done. I'm hitting the kill switch." And because we've already mentioned, everybody sees different things that the mirror wants to show them. Kaylee has this touching moment where she sees her mother, Katee Sackoff, Marie, the character, and she gives her a hug through the mirror. And Tim, he just sees the mirror. He says, "We're done here. We're breaking this." He hits the kill switch, anchor swings down, and you just hear, you don't see it, you just hear this thud. You don't hear glass break, and then you see his look go from like, aha, to, oh. And the anchor swung into Karen Gillan, into Kaylee, and kills her very slowly and painfully. And he actually did call the police.
Yeah.
And the movie ends full circle from where his character arc began, of 11-year-old Tim being taken and kind of incarcerated into like a juvenile asylum.
Right.
And now he's incarcerated for real, with his sister's dead body, and also Mike's dead body in the house also. So he's probably going down for double murder.
Yeah. And
yeah, the movie literally it ends with him being put in the car, and he sees the ghosts of, or when he was a kid. Oh, this is a great when he was a kid, he saw his parents' ghosts. Now he sees his parents' ghosts, and Kaylee is there too.
Oh, it's so haunting. What a fantastic and haunting moment. And for those who haven't seen it, when the anchor strikes Kaylee, water and power bars fall out of her like a piñata, because that's all she's been consuming for 12 hours. No, I'm kidding. That doesn't. The highest praise I can give this film is that I'm not sure that ending will never not completely fuck me up.
Oh,
every time that ending, I just go,
yeah.
Like, it's like, oh my, it's so dour and it feels so wrong.
Yeah.
But as a horror fan, you're like, yes, like it's just, and again, this is the last time you'll see, Flanagan starts evolving from this point, and the work gets better, but it gets different.
Well, let me ask you this. What's worse, Baby in the Tunnel or Anchor in the Neck?
Yeah. Oh, God, what kind of person
Yes.
am I? Yes to all. It's weird. It's
Yes.
weird because but you know what though? I've lived with the ending of Oculus for so long. And really, as much as I've seen Absentia, that like discovering the fetus is fairly new for me.
Right.
I've, like never noticed that until watching it again, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, the fetus is horrendous, but it's horrendous. But it's also this. It's weird. I don't want to go too much back into Absentia, but Absentia. I'm not saying the creature or this otherworldly thing is innocent, but it's almost acting in instinct. Whereas this mirror, just like Samuel L. Jackson says in 1408, is fucking evil. This mirror is evil.
Yeah.
Absentia, you don't get the vibe that this is that the thing is evil. You get the vibe that it's just surviving. The Lasser glass, the mirror, that is an evil object. So if I'm going to choose, and not to mention just what happens to Tim and what happens to Kaylee, their fates, I gotta go with the mirror.
Okay.
I mean, you also there's the other thing of he spent a decade in like this child in this mental hospital, and he's effectively out for 2 days. So like she picks him up and the mirror is delivered to the house the next day, or at least that's the timeline that you get from watching it. So it's almost like, imagine you do a decade in prison and you get out and 2 days later you're going back probably for the rest of your life and you just watched your sister die.
God. That's rough, man.
So again, it's one of those endings that is will you ever be able to shake it off? Like, I mean, it's not going to keep you up at night. I mean, depending upon who you are, but it's one of those endings that just like, it's over and you're like, yeah.
It is definitely, it's definitely in the same vein. Now it's not, I don't think it's up there with these, but it's in the same vein of Hereditary and The Mist, where there's this, where like the scenes happen and when you realize what you're watching, it's just a total gut punch. And the credits like roll so soon after that, like you're not able to, like you're just like, what that's it? What? I think Oculus has the slightest of slight ending advantages over Absentia in that department.
If we had to rank Flanagan's films, right, would you put this higher than Absentia? Where would you put this in terms of Flanagan's films?
I know what my top 3 are. Numbers, if we're just dealing with his 7 horror movies, my 1 and 2 are pretty solid. I think I'd put this at number 5, Oculus, and I would put this above Absentia, just because it's like you could tell. Imagine watching Absentia for the first time, and you're gonna say to yourself, "Wow, could you imagine if this guy had $5 million, what he could do?"
Right.
And this is what he did with, and $5 million is nothing.
No.
But it's, you could tell. And again, we talked about in Absentia, the acting is really, really good in Absentia.
Yeah.
But there is the vibe that a lot of those people are his friends and his family. And, here, you have Karen Gillan, you have Katee Sackoff, you have Rory Cochrane. These are big time actors, and they brought a hell of a lot to these roles. So I think Oculus gets the nod. Again, Chris and I, all 3 of us, we've spoken about it. Flanagan, we're not saying, like, if I said this is my ranked 5 out of 7, you'd probably think, oh, 5 out of 7. No, it's number 7 is awesome. It's like, you know, on my list. So yeah, this is a great movie. It's just Flanagan makes great freaking movies.
I could definitely say that, again, like Danny just said, because it's, you know, none of us could ever bring, it's so hard to rank these because I really do enjoy them all. I would say I definitely like it more than Absentia. I would say I like it more than Before I Wake. If I had to, right now, it's only because I have not watched Ouija, Origin of Evil. It's been a minute. Maybe it's been about a year since I've watched it again. Off the top of my head right now, I would have to put it neck and neck with Ouija, Origin of Evil, and everything else above that. So as much as I hate even saying it because like just the phrase, but you know, in this case, Oculus is middle of the road Flanagan, but it's still great. Like it's still like that doesn't mean anything, you know?
Yeah.
There is one scene that we haven't talked about that is one of the just creepiest moments in this movie, and it's all the way at the beginning. It's I call them the ghost busts. Not ghost. When she first, and again, that was a trailer moment, but it works every damn time.
Yes.
Where she takes the sheet off the mirror, and there's these 2 statues. We don't know what they are at first, but they're statues, and they're covered in sheets. She sees 3 in the mirror, and then the third one moves. And then she turns, and there's only 2. And then she looks back, and now all 3 of them are moving. And then it's the slow taking. And I don't know if you know this, but Flanagan said that under the third sheet, is actually the guy who created the laser glass for the movie. Bruce Larson. Yes, he is under the sheet.
he's the middle one. He's the taller one.
Yes, under the sheet, the sheet that doesn't get pulled off.
Yeah,
is Bruce Larson, who is the sculptor of the laser glass, and that's like his cameo. And Mike Flanagan said that he was holding it together, having the time of his life underneath that sheet in that scene.
I think that was probably the most suspenseful scene for me to watch too. And I think that scene alone was more suspenseful than anything I'd seen in Absentia. Now, I'm going to contradict you guys though, because I actually enjoyed Absentia more.
Okay.
But the reason why is just because I really loved the 2 sisters, but just the fact that, what's the pregnant sister's name again?
Trisha.
Just the fact that she's pregnant and the husband's been missing for years. Just, I love that whole dynamic. And then bringing in, you know, the detective boyfriend. Like, to me, that made that movie a lot more unique than this movie. Like this movie, the mirror itself is something that tantalizes my imagination, and I want more of that. But I felt like I'd seen more unique things in Absentia. And I liked the dynamic between the siblings more, and I cared about what happened to them more. So that's why I would rank it. But like, I haven't seen these movies multiple times like you guys, so maybe in future viewings I might change my ranking.
What stands out about Oculus is just how this film so ridiculously successfully plays with time.
Oh yeah.
It plays with the interweaving of time. It's just from beginning to end, and increasing throughout the film. Like I said before, by the end, I mean, it's nonstop. All of these characters are in the same room together over the course of 11, 12 years. It's just, it's nuts. And really, like you said, Pete, how Absentia really stands out to, both of these films have just, they both have things that stand out without a doubt.
Absolutely.
They're both, Absentia and Oculus, are the best film made by a lesser director. Very easily, Oculus should be the standout movie of a horror director's filmography, but this is not your average horror director. And that's, you know, I don't think it's like bold to say at this point, being that he's made 7 full-length horror films plus The Haunting of Hill House, that he's already up there filmography-wise with some of the greats, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you can mention Flanagan's name in a conversation with Craven and Carpenter and Hitchcock, and I don't think, like, he might think that we're speaking about him too much that way, but I don't think it's an exaggeration when you look at the quality of work.
You have to give him credit for the maturity as a director as he continues to go.
Yeah.
Haunting of Hill House alone, the man directed every episode.
Right.
It's so daunting to the point where by the end of that, like, him and Kate Siegel would wake up in the morning, look at each other and be like, I'm so sick of doing this. Like, it really, it was a daunting, he said it multiple times, it was a daunting task.
Yeah, and you guys said that the Lasser Glass mirror, the Lasser Glass is in every one of his movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it appears. It doesn't. The only one that it doesn't appear in as a mirror is Gerald's Game, because in Gerald's Game it's the bed frame.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It's and turned into the bed frame. It's in Dr. Sleep. The Lasser Glass can be seen just outside the gold room before Dan walks in. One of the scenes where Nell is dancing around Hill House by her. She thinks she's dancing with someone, but she's by herself. Yeah. She strolls right past the mirror.
Oh, shit. Well, you know what? One thing that you're going to have to rewatch is Hush, because that's going to be our next Flanagan film. And I noticed that both of you guys did not put that lower than Absentia or this movie. So we're up in our game here.
We will we'll get to it in a couple weeks, but the Hush is, I mean, it's one of the best slasher films since Scream. I don't know if that's a bold statement, but that's how I feel.
Nice.
I would agree with that. And it's also, it takes a plot that you've seen 100 times and it Mike Flanagan's the hell out of it. It completely, you know, and now that I'm thinking about Absentia and Oculus, it's stuff that we've talked about, but that for a slasher movie, you don't see ever. And that makes it, like, I remember that's what stood out to me the most was how different it felt. You know, oh, it's a home invasion slasher. I've seen this movie before. No, you haven't.
Dude, I'm really excited because I'd like to see.
That's still streaming on Netflix, right? It should be.
Yeah, it's a Netflix. It's a Blumhouse film that was released directly through Netflix.
We should bring up Oculus is on Hulu now, and it's also free on Tubi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to check it out, you know, because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I didn't see Absentia last time." If you don't have a Shudder account, I'm sure a lot of you guys have Hulu. You can check that out, or like Danny just said, you can watch it on Tubi too. But I definitely recommend getting a freaking Shudder account, man. We got freaking Joe Bob's gonna have a special coming up this Friday.
Next Friday, yeah.
Summer specials coming up on Shudder right now. You have Impetigore, you have La Llorona, not the Conjuring one. You have the Guatemala.
La Llorona. Oh, sorry. I just watched that last night. It was
stuff on Shudder right now.
Yeah.
Also, and Chris knows about my history with the movie The Ring. Shudder just put up the original Japanese version of the Ringu, Ring 2, and Ring 0, which I never even heard of.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to watch the Japanese version of The Ring for the first time. And just to fill you in, Pete, I hated The Ring for years. It was like my least favorite horror movie.
Okay.
Don't ask. So I'm very interested to see the original because I didn't like The Grudge either. But then I saw Ju-on and it freaked the hell out of me.
Is that what happens after Schwarzenegger defeats Samara? She becomes Ring 0.
Yes.
No, Ring 0.
Ring 0. I was gonna say Ring 0 Operator. That's another terrible joke you could add to my
fist, grab it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine.
See, and you know what? That ties it all together because The Running Man is based on a Richard Bachman book that's written by Stephen
Look
King.
at that. Holy shit.
Right.
Awesome. I think that's probably a good sign for us to wrap it up. But I just want to say thanks, Chris. Thanks, Danny. You guys are awesome. You educated me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Such a good time.
And you know what? We're going to talk about Hush in 2 weeks, and we'll see you guys then.